and your accommodation. Grateful to be here with the Secretary of State, my longtime friend, and wonderful to be leading here in the state of California and to talk today about voting rights and our upcoming election. First and foremost, we're here to remind voters throughout California that there is a special election on Tuesday, November 4th. For those who are not yet focused on that, please focus on it. It's an election on the 4th. That is the last day to vote. Voting has been ongoing for a couple of weeks now, and you can vote multiple ways: in person, at voting centers, vote by mail as well. And before I dive into additional details, I want to take a moment to say that today is the last day to register to vote in this election, except for those who are eligible for same-day voter registration. So if you've been putting it off, if you've been saying, I'm going to register to vote, the deadline's just not quite here, the deadline's here. So time to register to vote if that is your intention. In California, you have the right to vote early as soon as you receive your ballot, and to vote in the manner that works best for you. And that's why we strongly encourage voters to mail in their ballots early. Sending it ahead ensures your vote is counted and avoids last-minute complications, especially because in many parts of California, recent changes in the U.S. Postal Mail Service mean that your ballot may not be counted if you drop it off at a post office or a USPS mailbox on election day. This is a change. I want to highlight this. This is true for any community that is more than 50 miles from one of California's 6 regional mail processing facilities, and we have a map of where the facilities are, what the 50-mile radius encompasses. You can see those facilities there on the map. California voters have multiple ways and opportunities to vote early, skip the lines, avoid last-minute surprises, and make sure their voices are heard. Secretary Weber will cover the options shortly. The right to freely cast your vote and have it counted is the very foundation of our democracy. Your vote is your voice. California values, respects, and upholds that right through strong, uniform, statewide voting laws that ensure elections are fair, are accessible, are secure, and are trustworthy. As your AG, it's my job to enforce these laws, and many of which are outlined in the Voter Bill of Rights, which the Secretary will detail momentarily. Today, my office is reissuing alerts and guidance to strengthen protections for voters, including for voters with disabilities. This guide covers state and federal protections, including the right to an accessible voting place and the ability to vote privately and independently, to have assistance if you need it, to exercise your right to vote, just like any other voter. We've also issued guidance for law enforcement, outlining that it's a felony to coerce or intimidate someone to vote, not vote, or vote a certain way. It's also a felony to tamper with or interfere with voting machines. Blocking access to voting locations or disrupting the process of opening or closing polling stations is unlawful too. So we have a guidance document for law enforcement. And then finally, we've put out a consumer alert on election misinformation. In our digital world, more and more voters go online for information, which makes election misinformation a growing threat. Election misinformation includes false statements about where, when, or how to vote, or misleading claims about eligibility. This type of interference is illegal and will hold perpetrators who engage in it accountable. We saw this type of conduct clearly in past elections with attempts to mislead voters through robocalls, including a robocall from President Biden himself. Supposedly, purportedly, and online disinformation as well. Today's alert reminds voters that it's a crime to intentionally mislead someone about their eligibility to vote, give incorrect information about where or when to vote, tell someone their polling place is closed when it is actually open. These protections are part of our broader commitment to ensure every Californian can exercise their right to vote safely and securely. In the lead up to the election and on Election Day, my office will be on call to provide assistance to the Secretary of State's office in enforcing California's robust election laws. As needed, through a team of attorneys and administrative staff located across the state. We're mobilized, we're ready. We can jump into action as necessary to make sure the laws of our great state are followed. Unfortunately, there are people who would prefer to see lower voter turnout. Those who benefit if Californians stay home and abstain from participating in democracy. Our strongest response is to exercise our right to vote. Again, your vote is your voice. Voting is the most fundamental way to participate in our democracy, to advocate for your community, to share your perspective and your views about the future of our shared society, and to help shape that future. From a young age, my parents taught me that voting isn't just an option, it's a responsibility. And I had a mom who was an immigrant from the Philippines, and I was born in the Philippines at a time when the right to vote was in jeopardy, where democracy was teetering on the brink, where a dictator was on the verge of declaring martial law and ending free and fair elections. And my parents wanted me to grow up in a place where my vote was my voice, where I could speak up, where I could pursue my California dream and my American dream. And so in the wake of the rise to power of a dictator and the imposition of martial law and the end of democracy as it was known and the end of the people's right to vote, my parents brought me to California because they believed here in the United States the right to vote will be protected. It would be something that is fundamental. It is the right from which all other rights flow. So it's something I've never taken for granted. And I'll also say that my mom, born a Philippine citizen, immigrated here as an adult, had a green card to lawfully live in the United States for many years, and then decided to be a citizen when I was in the middle of my first competitive election. And as I remember the moment when I was doing some election work, and my mom said, she said, "Babe," this is like a quote because she calls me Babe, "Babe, I think I'm going to become a U.S. citizen." And she said, "I think I'm going to become a U.S. citizen so I can vote for you in your election." So so she did become a U.S. citizen. She did vote in that election. I hope and think she voted for me. I felt very confident that from that day on I might win elections, I might lose elections, but I would never be shut out in an election because I would have my mom at least voting for me and every time I ran. So that's my mom's own story about voting, and I know that she has always raised her voice, never taken it for granted to be able to express her views as a voter of California and in the United States of America about what our future should be like, who should represent her, and what policies should be in place. So before I end, I just want to say that Secretary Weber and I have done this type of press conference multiple times in the past. We will continue to do it. It's important. She's the Chief Elections Officer. I am the Chief Law Officer who has the privilege and honor of enforcing the great election laws of our state. We will continue to defend your fundamental right to vote without obstacles, without intimidation, without deception. We'll use the full force of our offices to enforce election laws, to protect the integrity, the security, and the reliability of California's elections. California voters can trust our election system. They can trust the array of voting options that are presented to you as voters, and they can trust the results of their votes. We will help ensure that going forward. And before I hand it over to the Secretary, I want to acknowledge my team who makes this work possible. These strong election protections being enforced don't just happen. It requires a great team, and I'm proud to be able to work with and be part of a great team in the California DOJ, including our government law section, our civil rights enforcement section, our consumer protection section, and our Department of Law Enforcement, all working together to protect that fundamental right to vote and to make sure our elections are safe, secure, reliable, and accurate. It is my pleasure now to turn it over to my longtime friend, my amazing colleague, and great leader of the state of California, our Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Weber.
I want to thank my good friend, Rob Bonta. We met in the Assembly, and we authored a lot of bills together. And over the years, I've discovered that obviously we have a lot of things in common about the issue of voting and the rights that exist in this state and this nation, and our love for voting and what it means in this democracy about how we make decisions, who we respect, and how we work together. Good morning to all of you. I want to, once again, as I say, thank the staff that our Attorney General has, who has been a partner for us, with us in these very difficult times. I think when both of us took office in 2021, we did not know at that time we'd be working so closely together on a regular basis to make sure that these issues are protected, that you're protected, and that Californians are protected. You know, it's interesting as I've traveled around and talked to young people about voting and why it's so important. I was at a class the other day for UC Berkeley, and the interesting thing was that I said to them, in many ways, I'm unique to the extent that I straddle some generations of activity. I have a tremendous respect for the right to vote, but I also have a respect for those who fought for the right to vote, because they were my parents, and they were my friends, and they were people that I knew and my grandparents. And despite the fact that I have been in this country for over 200 years, and my grandparents have, I'm a second-generation voter, which means I understand the struggle that has existed for women, for people of color, to get the right to vote. And the only persons who voted before me were my parents. My grandparents in Arkansas never got a chance to vote, never had an opportunity to vote, despite the fact that they had been in this country for a couple of hundred years, because of the intimidation of voting. And so I understand what it means to be in a position where you have the opportunity, but the fear is great. And the consequences of folks protecting you is not there. It's not there. And so we want to make sure that this administration in California says very clearly to those who are working the polls, who are basically voting in the system, that you have a right and that we will protect it. When I came into office, there was intimidation among those who worked in the polls. Many of our poll workers were intimidated. Some of them quit. Some of our registrar voters stopped because their neighbors and friends were intimidating them because there were consequences or there were outcomes that they didn't like. And I said to all of them that as long as I am Secretary of State, you will be protected, that we will defend you and we will prosecute whoever has a tendency to attack you, as we had some folks trying to do that, to the fullest extent of the law. And they didn't understand how much I appreciated poll workers and those who work for us in the state. But I did, because my mother was a poll worker. When she came to California and she worked the polls and volunteered and registered for the first time, we had no polling place where we lived, and my mother volunteered our house. And so I lived and grew up with the polling place in my living room. So I understood the power of voting and what it means to those who don't have much of a voice in a system, that this is their voice, this is their chance, this is their opportunity to make a difference and to be heard. And like I said, my mother literally volunteered our house. As a middle school kid, I used to go down the driveway to walk out from the back door to the front because important business was happening in the living room. People were voting at 351 West 45th Street. And so I remember that, and I said it embedded in me this power that people felt. The poorest people in the community, in the city, had the power, the same power that the governor had, that the president had. They had one vote. And that in itself is a statement of the people and their power and their desire. So we will protect that. You know, the interesting thing is that this is our election is November 4th, and every election is important. As I learned as a kid walking down the driveway, didn't matter whether it was the mayor of Los Angeles, it didn't matter whether it was city council, didn't matter it was something about the water bills or whatever it was. Every election was important, and everyone should vote in every election. And there's no exception to this for November 4th. And the fact that this is the last day to register to vote is important. We've made tremendous changes in voting in California that has empowered so many people. 84% of all of our potentially registered persons have actually registered to vote. 84% of our citizens in California who are eligible to vote have registered to vote. That is amazing. Right now, there are over 2 million Californians have already cast their ballot for November 4th. They have already participated in the system. And if you want to know about that, if you go to my website, you will see it every day as it goes up. People are interested in having themselves heard. They want their voice heard. They want the outcomes to be whatever they choose to be, but they want to participate in the process. And so we're excited about the fact that so many of them are doing it. We also had, as pointed out, we have a registration of the same day of elections in California, and you will be able to vote provisionally if you haven't done it by today, and your friends say, "Oh wow, I missed it." They didn't miss it because November 4th has not come. In California and many other states, you can register the same day of an election. Your ballot will be held provisionally to make sure that you have not registered and voted somewhere else. And if all that comes together and all the information is correct, then you can actually vote. When I was at UC Santa Barbara this year celebrating the students at UC Santa Barbara because they had won our ballot bowl in last November, the students complained about one thing. They had a long line to stand in. And I said, your long line was your hesitation because you didn't register to vote on time. The line next to you where people were walking by very quickly had already registered and were voting. You had not, so you had to stand in a line to verify that you were the person who you were, that you had the documentation, and that you were eligible to vote. So we did. So they experienced same-day registration and same-day voting. And so as a result, they understand that this is a process that they can still participate in. And so there were lots of UC Santa Barbara students registering the day of the election, and they won our ballot bowl for having the most students who register and to participate in voting. California has, as always, its idea that you have rights to vote, where we know that the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is always in question at this point. But California has its own voting rights, and you have certain rights as a citizen in California. You have the right to get a new ballot if you have made a mistake. So don't think that if somehow or another you scratched something out or you didn't sign your right name in the right place, we will give you a new ballot. So you have a right to have a second ballot, a new ballot. You have a right to get help casting your ballot from anyone that you choose, except from your employer or your union representative. So we will have people at the polls who can help you. You can have a friend help you. You can have your church member help you. Any of those folks can help you to basically cast your ballot if you're confused about how to do it. The right to drop off your completed vote-by-mail ballot at any polling place in California. That is important to understand because many times folks think, I have to go back to my precinct and vote in that place. You don't. Any polling place in California, you can actually drop off your ballot. It will eventually get to your place. It will be counted. And because it's a statewide election, it doesn't necessarily always have to be counted in your precinct at that moment. The right to get election materials in a language other than English, if enough people in your polling place speak that language. We at this point do about 10 to 11 different languages that we have in California. California is an extremely diverse state. And you have a right to have that. And we have more that are asking us every day that we're evaluating whether or not there's enough folks in a certain community to provide that language. But we want every Californian to be comfortable enough and informed enough to be able to understand what they're voting for and to vote the way they want to. The right to ask questions to election officials about election procedures and watch the election process, you have the right to do that. Most of you know that you can go into a polling place and you can walk down the aisles and see folks actually opening envelopes, dealing with the ballots. You can't deal with them yourself. We're not going to let you count them, but we give you the opportunity to observe it. And when I've gone to places and I've seen folks who've done that, and then they're leaving, I said, why are you leaving? They said, it's kind of boring. Well, I didn't say it would be exciting. I said we would do what we do, which is count ballots, and it's like watching paint dry. It's not the most exciting thing in the world to do. But you watch it to make sure that it dries right, okay? And the same is true with us with the voting. We want to make sure that if you want to see us in action, you can, and that's available to every Californian. The right to report any illegal or fraudulent election activity to an election official or the Secretary of State's office. If you know of anything that's fraudulent, that's illegal, that's taking place, we want to know. We want the information, we want to know it, and we will basically deal with necessary in terms of the legal steps that are there. And as you pointed out, our AG is supportive of us, as well as our highway patrol, our law enforcement officers up and down the state. When they're called into action, they know that they've been trained, they have the information, they understand the rules and regulations. We want to make sure that you know that you're protected, that you're not isolated, and that things can happen to you and you not have a voice of anything else. You need to know that it is illegal to interfere with the election process by intimidating voters or by deliberately providing inaccurate information to voters about the time, place, and manner of voting. Some people think that it would be funny to do this. Maybe not when they're bailing you out of jail will it be funny. These kinds of things are serious. These are criminal acts, and you're not to intimidate or to try to prevent anyone else from voting. Bad actors are trying to use all kinds of things, as we pointed out, social media, false claims, other kinds of things to keep people from voting. That is not going to happen. Those are criminal activities, and you should not be engaged in those activities. We make every effort. We want to make sure that these efforts are illegal, that we be clear that these efforts are illegal, and we will prosecute those who've been involved in those activities that are there. So we take this very seriously. We are recently alerted to obviously some misinformation circulating on social media claiming that the small holes that you see on these ballot envelopes are, people say they're designed to make you kind of see how other people voted. I saw that and I thought right before I put my ballot in, I said, let me see if I can see how I voted. And I looked and flipped and turned, and I could not see anything but white. Okay? So if you have that issue, check it yourself. But the reality is that the small holes on those envelopes that are designed that people think it's some kind of nefarious activity that's occurring was actually designed and worked in by our counties and by our disabled communities. This is designed to give them, particularly those who are visually impaired, to give them an opportunity to figure out where to sign the ballot and how to open the ballot and those kinds of things. And so it was designed specifically for those who are disabled to make it easier for them to basically access their ballot, figure out how to sign that ballot, take care of those things. We understand that there are probably some other small holes in other cities that have decided that there's some other ways in which you can open the ballot a certain way, and they've designed theirs that way. Every county does its own ballot. They print their own ballot, and so we understand that. And there's certain things that we do statewide, and one is the visual piece to make sure that folks can access the ballot. So there's nothing nefarious taking place. There's nobody, I don't know who in the world would sit and try to see a hole through 23 million ballots, but if you have nothing else to do, what can I say? But the bottom line is it is not going to create any knowledge of anything inside that envelope, other than that the envelope is there, that people can feel the fact that the ballot is inside of it. And if they're using it to decide how to sign on the outside, they know where those holes are and where to sign. So it's important that we understand that. If anyone has any other issues questions that come up, we do our best to try to make sure that all that information is on our website, so that if there are questions of misinformation, disinformation, we put all of that there. And then you can always call our office to find out exactly what's taking place that's there. So if you have any questions, our website, our hotline is always open, and that's 1-800-345-VOTE, 1-800-345-VOTE. That gives you the information that you need for our languages, the information that I've told you about, what's happening with the ballot. All those things are there. You can always go on our website and see how the votes are going, how they're going up, what's happening in terms of that, and you will always be able to see the results in it. So don't remember the fact that we are basically here to provide support. We want every Californian to vote. 2 million of you have already done that. We hope that's just the beginning of a rocket explosion in the next week with people actually turning in their ballots. Keep in mind, as our AG has told us, that there are some concerns about whether or not the same day putting into a postal box will actually get postmarked on those days. We want every Californian who casts a ballot to make sure it counts. So if you're going to use the Postal Service, make sure you put it in the day before so it can be postmarked. Make sure if you walk into it the day of, you want to go inside the Postal Service and ask them to stamp your ballot for you, and they will. You also want to make sure if you want to put it into our box, our voting box, those big boxes we have, they will be counted on that day. So we have more ways, more days, and anything you can imagine to basically vote. No one has an excuse for not voting in California. We've made it so accessible in comparison to what we used to do in the past when we had 1 day to vote, a few hours to vote, and that was it. Now you have 11 days, and you only have one question, yes or no, on this particular ballot, which makes it very easy for people to vote because it's not a list and array of things. You have information that's there. We've sent out voter information guides. We have all kinds of information. It's on our website. We even have videos on our website right now to talk about the issues that we've raised right here, as well as other things that you may want to know. And we're always accessible through our hotline to answer any questions you may have. So I want to thank you for coming. And we always say, don't delay, just vote right away. Take care of it. Take care of your business. Your choice is your voice, and we know that. So if you have issues, concerns, what have you, the best way to address them is through the ballot box to make sure that you vote your conscience and vote what you want to happen in California. We're honored to have you here today, and we're obviously open for any questions that you might have. Thank you.
And forgive me because this was not drafted ahead of time, so it came to me as you were talking. We just had the luxury of sitting down with all of the top 20 candidates who are running for governor, and we talked talked about specifically this election and Prop 50. And one of the questions that we raised with some of the proponents of Prop 50 came from some of the opponents of Prop 50. And you both shouted a lot about making sure that every vote counts. And I think one of the criticisms of this particular ballot measure is that should redistricting pass, there are folks who live in what are now red districts who have always voted a certain way. When they vote that way, the person that they want goes to Congress. And if Prop 50 passes, their votes are essentially by design being diluted so that when they still, if they continue to vote Republican and all their neighbors vote Republican, that Republican candidate no longer goes. Now it's a Democrat that goes to Congress by design. I'm curious how you two, whose job it is to ensure that every vote counts, especially you, Ms. Weber, what you would say to those critics who say by design Prop 50 is essentially taking those votes, or at least at the very least diluting the votes of those Republican voters in those districts?
Many would argue that anytime we do census and we do redistricting and we create districts, someone would feel that they've been diluted, that they have that their vote is not as strong as it used to be. I doubt if all those people get up and move, but they will continue to work with that elected official.
Well, forgive me for interrupting, but right now California has an independent redistricting commission.
I understand all that.
That those are sort of fair and equally distributed, and this essentially gets rid of that and says we're no longer going to be fair and equal. We're specifically making sure that there will be more Democrat voters in this region. So I guess the question is, do you think that, I mean, how does that sort of align with every vote should count? And I guess we should also mention that this is being done in the middle of a census term, and what some of these folks pointed out, that Steve Hilton in particular said, listen, we just have these fires in LA. We don't know where any of those folks live. So there really is no way for us to know right now where those voters are and how they would align with these new districts. So sorry, if you could continue, but just with the understanding that we don't have that independent commission right now. So that is the distinction here between what would normally happen.
Well, a couple of things. One, obviously, they're going to vote on this, and they will decide whether or not this is something they want to do. And that's the important piece about it. It's not that they're making this decision and that's it. It would happen that way if they only left it to the legislature and they decided and that would be it. It would be done. But instead, the legislature has asked the people of California, would you like for this to happen?
But they are required to under law because the people of California had previously voted for that independent commission. So the legislature didn't do this because they wanted to. They required.
They did too because they had to by law. So the legislature wanted to do it. They didn't have to do it. They wanted to do it, and it was required to do it by law, that the only way they could do this would be by law. And that's what they're putting to the public now. Is this what you want to do? The public can always say, and the majority will win no matter what, no. So it's up to the people. It's not up to us. It's not the two of us that are doing it. I mean, the legislature said, this is an idea. Do you think, would you like for it to happen? And they can say no. And some have said no. And some have said yes.
Back to that original question, what do you say to the critics who say, if they vote yes, this is essentially taking away the votes from the Republican, or at least diluting the votes from those Republican voters, so their vote no longer counts the same way it does. And I guess what I'm asking is, what can you say to those folks following the comments of the both? And I would love, A.G. Bonta, for you to address this too. You both just said every vote counts. Right?
It still counts.
But what this does, if passed, dilutes those votes so that they no longer count the same way they currently do.
They're not a half a vote. They're still a full vote. It's still a powerful experience. It is not a half vote. Every redistricting is going to change something. And the fact that they're not saying, okay, you get a half a vote and you get 2/3 of a vote and you don't get any vote, you still have a vote. You still have a voice. And they'll still exercise it. And one could say, well, if they won, if no won, then that means the people who said yes had their voices taken away? Probably not, because they have the same voice. They have the opportunity to go and say yes or no. And that's what they're being given at this point, the opportunity to say yes or no. It's still the people's choice.
Yeah, sure. Well, first I'll say all the points that you're making are, I think, things that the voters are considering right now in real time as we speak, as they decide whether they want to vote yes or no on Prop 50. and it is up to them. They will decide. It's the rawest form of democracy, of direct democracy, for the people to decide if this is what they want to do. And they can have your thoughts in mind, Mr. Hilton's criticisms in mind. They can hear other perspectives from other people and decide. And districts change all the time. They change by requirement, by the census. The Independent Redistricting Commission changes them. Districts in California have moved from purple to blue. They've changed over time. They've moved from red to purple, and maybe even moving the opposite way. Each time a district changes, based on just the census, people living there, it might change the outcome that someone wanted. If they were once in a red district, that's now a blue district. They might say, "Hey, I used to always vote for a Republican. Now, the majority in my district is Democrat, and Democrats more likely to win. My vote is diluted." It's not diluted. They still have one vote. They always have one vote. They have one vote on November 4th. They have one vote in every election going forward, and they can vote on every election that there is, from the special districts to the city council to the school board. Many of those races are nonpartisan races, to their sheriff, to their DA, to their Congress, to their assembly member, senator, the president. If they're voting at the presidential level and they're voting for, if it's a Republican that you're talking about who feels that their vote is diluted and they're voting for a Republican presidential candidate, then they have one vote to support that person. There's no dilution. They still have a full vote. So I understand Mr. Hilton's criticisms and concerns. He can share them with the voters of California. Maybe they'll agree with them. Maybe they won't. But it's an appropriate thought to share for consideration. All thoughts are appropriate for consideration, and people, that's what voting's about, to weigh the different concerns, the different arguments, the pluses, the minuses, and then to decide what you want as a voter of California. And that's what we're saying here. We want people to vote. We want people to consider all this. And thank you for putting those perspectives on the table. I think they are appropriate for people to consider as they make their vote.
And one more follow-up question, if you'll all be sorry. Betty Yee, who's a Democrat, who supports this, had a really interesting sort of response to this question. And I think it sort of counters what you guys are saying. And so I just kind of want to push back on the not being diluted. So my understanding is if this passes, the Democratic supermajority legislature has drawn these maps to intentionally bring in more blue votes into districts that are currently red to dilute those votes. So now if everybody who currently lives in that same exact place votes the same way, the intention, and by design and very publicly they've said, yes, we want now that congressional district to go to a Democrat. And so we're going to make sure we put enough Democratic voters in there to dilute the Republican votes that currently get a Republican to Congress. So I would just love to push back on the idea that this doesn't dilute those votes, because yes, they still have one vote, but there would need to be many more Republicans in that area to outweigh the additional number of Democrat votes that are being put into that district. So it is really not just, at least my understanding, and I'm not a mathematician, but Betty Yee was our controller and our treasurer, and she's very good with numbers, and even she acknowledged, yes, we are diluting those votes, but it's because we want a Democrat in Congress, and we think Democrats will be better for California overall. So my question to you is, are you saying that mathematically their votes still count as much, even though we are putting more Democratic votes in there? Or is this really just a, listen, we think it's better for California to have a Democrat in Congress, so that's why we should vote yes on it?
I'm saying that their vote still counts as a vote. It counts as one vote before Prop 50, and if Prop 50 passes, it counts as one vote after Prop 50. The districts are different, no doubt about it, and the districts change every 10 years, whether it's by the legislature determining it or if it's by an independent redistricting commission. I definitely understand that the maps that are being proposed provide a better opportunity for Democrats to win in 5 more seats. I think the broad view, like take it out of California and pull the camera back and look at nationwide, all the talk about why this was, why the governor proposed this, why the legislature worked on it, was to neutralize the abuse of power from Texas, the redistricting that was blatantly partisan, seemingly, and seemed to dilute the voice of California, to blunt that. So I think that the dilution argument can be made in a lot of different ways. I think California is according to the governor and the legislature who put this on the ballot, is fearing that the voice of California is being diluted because of the abuse of power that they're seeing in Texas, and they want to get it back on even ground again. I think there was an attempt to move 5 districts red in Texas. There's an attempt to move 5 districts blue here, seemingly, based on what the governor and the legislature have said. You're back at neutral, and square one again. And so I think that's what the argument is from the other side. And again, voters will decide whether they find that persuasive, whether they find it true, whether they find it compelling, and they'll listen to the arguments that you're making as well, and Mr. Hilton is making, and they should consider all of it when they make a decision.
To be fair, they're not my arguments. I'm just asking you to respond.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm as a person channeling what others have said. I'll be clear about that. Hi.
I wanted to ask a question, Attorney General, about the fact that this morning in Florida, Kristi Noem said quite bluntly, we are sending ICE agents to San Francisco. Yesterday, President Trump said a comment about preparations for the fact that National Guard would come to San Francisco, and that San Francisco wants and needs the National Guard. So we want to ask you your thoughts on this increasingly evident comments that are being made that ICE and National Guard will show up here in the next few days, if not the next few weeks.
So just to be clear, Kristi Noem's comments, which I haven't seen yet, were about ICE, not National Guard.
We're about ICE and alluding to National Guard, but that ICE would be coming to San Francisco and alluding to the fact that it would include the National Guard. Trump very specifically, President very specifically yesterday, saying
Yeah, no, I saw that.
will be coming to San Francisco.
Yeah.
It's not maybe we're thinking about it as kind of more definitive.
Yeah, we'll see. And we are, none of that's a surprise. That's exactly what Kristi Noem has talked about in the past, sending ICE all over the United States. Well, let's be clear, the blue cities and the blue states. It is completely partisan. They talk about the quote-unquote radical leftists all the time, the Democratic states. You saw her when she was on TV saying that L.A. would have burned down the whole city if they didn't send the National Guard and the Marines, which weren't necessary and were unlawfully deployed, in my opinion, and a trial judge has agreed with my legal perspective on that. So this is exactly what we expect from Ms. Noem and the president. The president is off the rails when it comes to his falsehoods. He's been on TV a couple times talking about how he won by a landslide in the 2020 election, that he lost, and he continues to say that he wins, and there's reporters in the room, some of whom that are agreeing with him, and it's difficult to see. I'm getting there. Yeah. So first, I want to make the point about his lies. San Francisco is not asking for the National Guard to come here. San Francisco is not asking for the National Guard to come here. San Francisco is not asking for the National Guard to come here, no matter what he says. And Governor Newsom recently said that. You're not invited. You're not welcome. We're not asking you to come. As far as I know, the leaders of this city and county have said the same. So he's just lying about that. And that is his brand, unfortunately, to make the lie and then to try to create a factual predicate, a factual basis for doing the action that is unlawful and not based on any facts. He'll also say, crime is sky high here in places where crime is down. Crime is down in San Francisco. Violent crime is down. Property crime is down. And crime is not a basis for deployment of the National Guard anyway. It violates the Posse Comitatus Act to do that. So there has to be an emergency. There has to be a rebellion. There has to be an invasion. There has to be the inability to enforce the laws with the regular forces. None of those things exist. There is no lawful basis to deploy the National Guard to San Francisco. Period. Full stop. End of story. So what can we do? We'll see him in court, as we always have. When he wrongfully and unlawfully deployed troops to L.A., we saw him in court. We got 2 orders, blocking, one, the federalization, and 2, the actions on the ground that violated the Posse Comitatus Act. We'll do that again. Immediately. We're ready. We see this coming. You haven't told me anything that I haven't heard about what the president has signaled and channeled that he will do. With respect to ICE, they are deploying ICE in different blue cities and blue states. They did it in L.A. in the Southern California region. We saw that, in early June, in the months and weeks that followed. We expect them to deploy ICE in California. They're targeting California. They want to go after California. They want to deploy ICE in California. As the federal government that is responsible for immigration enforcement, they may deploy ICE as long as ICE is doing lawful things. And they're not always doing lawful things. I said that for a reason. There's a judge that said that they were racially profiling, that they were making stops, detentions, searches, and seizures based on language spoken and a job that you appeared to have, low-wage jobs, and your location as well as your race. And so they're not always doing lawful things, but they may participate in immigration enforcement pursuant to, their official role. And targeting of California is something we always knew was going to happen. It was always going to happen. That's what this president does. He attacks and goes after those who he thinks didn't vote for him. It's wrong. It's unbecoming of the office. It's below the dignity of the office, but it is what this president does.
Can I ask a follow-up? How much preparatory work have your office done to file a lawsuit, or is it going to come just
All that is necessary to file immediately upon his action. If he deploys National Guard to San Francisco, we'll be in court within hours, if not minutes.
This is something you started planning back during the special session early in the term. And you and I actually talked when you were there during the special session. I'm curious, has your legal action been in the works since then?
We've been preparing since before the presidential election. Seeing that there was a possibility that Trump would win, and seeing what he said he would do on the campaign trail, reading what he said he would do in Project 2025, and preparing for all the things that he said he would do. We have prepared for. We prepared for deployment of National Guard. We prepared for invocation of the Insurrection Act. We've prepared for violations of the Posse Comitatus Act. We're ready. We owe our constituents readiness and preparedness. So we've been ready since before the election. We continue to work on it since between the election and the inauguration. And of course, we were the first state where National Guard was deployed. We've been through this. We've been in court on this. I have a great team. I'm proud of them, and we're ready.
We hope that everyone will turn out. I mean, we don't know. We don't predict elections. We leave that for you guys. We can't predict what's going to happen the day of, even when we're looking at numbers, because we count every vote, and that's our job and responsibility. When we had a one-item agenda before, which was the recall, we had great turnout. And because this is one item, we've got 2 million already turned in their ballots. So it's an easy election to the extent that people have made up in their minds what they're going to do, and they don't have other things competing with it. It's yes or no. It's a one-item agenda. And we assume that people will turn out, and we hope they do. We hope they do. We try to make it as easy as possible, as informed as possible, with as many opportunities that are there. I saw billboards coming in saying, be sure to vote. It's your right, it's your voice. We're doing all we can with the media to make sure that they alert people of what's going on, what's taking place. But since it is a one-item agenda, oftentimes those are the easiest elections for folks to participate, and we hope they do. We've tried to make it accessible in California, and this is one of those ways. Thank you all.
How does this compare, just to follow up numbers-wise, to the recall? Where are we in terms of ballots?
I don't know where we are, but I know that we had a lot because I was in San Francisco, and the registrar voter was shocked at the ballots that were just pouring in, and folks were saying that most of their ballots were cast way before the election because it was a one-item agenda, one-item ballot.
Is that something your office can get us? Just that here's where we were this time at the recall versus this time now?
They probably can. I'll have them check. If so, they'll put it on the website. Okay, because they keep the numbers. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments or questions? This was a fast election. The recall was different, so folks are moving fast, and as well as the public is coming to realize what's taking place. But we can probably see if the data is there from the last one-item agenda. Yeah. I'm interested now that you've asked.